Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Managing Energy for Organizational Gain. This is an introduction for executives and managers. First, a little housekeeping before we get started. I have you all muted so that we are not interrupted by background noises from people's telephones and things happening in their offices. If you have a question, though, please type it into the chat window. You see it in the lower right of your screen. Type it into the chat window, and I will answer as many questions as I can at the end of the webinar. I wanted to leave you to start you actually with a little thought about why I titled this what I did, Managing Energy for Organizational Gain. Um, the realization for me was that when you talk about energy, you're talking about your entire organization. That is, energy touches everyone, every department, every process, every employee uses energy. So if you're opening up a comprehensive conversation about energy and how to increase your energy performance, you're going to include everyone. And this gives you a real opportunity to not only work on your energy, but to work on organizational transformation itself to make your organization more productive, more efficient, and more competitive, globally more competitive. Um, Part of the reason I think this happens is that transformation in itself is actually very difficult. Sometimes people try organizational transformation initiatives and everybody agrees, for example, yes, we're going to talk to each other more, better communications. But in the end, it's nothing really there to talk about. When you're managing energy, on the other hand, what happens is that the focus is on the energy. And consequently, people don't recognize the transformation that's going on almost behind the scenes if you manage it properly. I like to think of this as looking at a faint star in the sky. That when you look at it directly, you can't see it, but when you look at something else, you can see that faint star out of the corner of your eye and get a fix on where it is. And organizational transformation, for me, is kind of like that. It's something that's difficult to do when you approach it directly, but something that really works when you're working on managing your energy. In any event, let's get started here and let's look at how we're going to go about doing that. First of all, our energy picture, one of the reasons that energy management makes so much sense at this time in history is that our energy picture is changing drastically. It's changing drastically from what it was 20, 30 years ago, and it is not going back. Some of the things that are affecting us right now is we are running up against peak oil. I don't believe that we're running out of oil. We're not running out of oil, but we are running out of cheap oil, which to me is a much more insidious problem. If they told us we're going to run out of oil in 5 years, well, everybody would go and do something different, and there'd be no question. But when the oil just gradually gets more and more expensive, it's a more difficult problem to address. People tend not to see it, and yet it's creeping up on you the whole time. The chart that you see there, in fact, reflects what economists tell us happens when a commodity becomes scarcer, and that is that it does not just crash through the ceiling in price. It becomes more volatile. So you get higher highs, but then it drops down to higher lows. But the volatility is what typically hurts organizations. It hurts your planning, it hurts your profit margins, it just hurts you all around. And we're starting to see that volatility now. A second facet of our energy picture are carbon caps. Carbon caps are coming into play around the world right now, and there is no question that in the long term, this is going to save us money. Even the insurance companies see that now. It will save us money. It's something we have to do. It will perhaps save us a planet. But there's also no question that in the short term, it makes energy more expensive. And that was part of the rationale, is that people would be more efficient if the energy were more expensive and actually took into account the cost of the carbon that is in the energy. We now have carbon caps. The state of California has a cap and trade system. The northeastern United States has a cap and trade system for power plants. British Columbia in Canada has a carbon tax. Europe has a continent-wide cap and trade, as does Australia has one as well. China has it in 15 or 16 cities. They're planning in the next 5 years to roll it out nationally. So carbon caps are coming along. We're going to see those everywhere within the next 5 or 8 years. There's no question about that. They will increase your energy cost, and that's something to be aware of and attentive to. A third facet of our energy picture is global unrest, and we're starting to see that more and more around the world. There is no coincidence that unrest happens in places where there are oil deposits. Okay, that mechanism has been around for years, so it's no real surprise. The realization now, however, is that energy, I mean oil in particular, but energy in general, is a global market. And what that means is that no matter where your energy comes from, if there is unrest someplace affecting the sources of that energy, you will see that in the price of your energy. Oil, in particular, as I said, is a global market. You do not pay what that oil would cost you if you were a country standing alone. You pay what the global market demands. And finally, we're seeing a lot of obsolete infrastructure. And that infrastructure consists of both the grid, the electrical grid that we have, as well as our pipeline system that transports oil and natural gas. This infrastructure was put in, some of it over 100 years ago. I like to tell people we basically have a 19th century infrastructure trying to serve a 21st century economy, and it's not working very well. This infrastructure is dumb. It does not lend itself to a lot of flexibility. It is tenuous at some points. Pretty much nearly fully loaded. Overloads are never far away in this infrastructure right now. They're also very susceptible to impacts due to climate change. There's more severe storms, flooding, things like that. Consequently, these grids, the pipeline system and the electrical grid, are going to be updated over the next 10, 15, 20 years. The updates and improvements and replacement projects will come out of ratepayer pockets. So there's another reason that energy is likely to get more expensive, and we're not likely to see this come down anytime soon. Okay, but it's not all bad. Lloyd's of London wrote a report in 2010 called Sustainable Energy Security, and there's a quote in there that I really like a lot, so I'm going to read that to you. It says, "Businesses which prepare for and take advantage of the new energy reality will prosper. Failure to do so could be catastrophic." Now, Lloyd's of London lives and dies by risk. They live and die by understanding risk. And mostly they've lived for the last 200 years. So when they say something like this, you have to pay attention. You have to take them seriously. They see something on the horizon. Whether or not anybody else does, they do, and they've got a pretty good track record. But I also like the phrasing. And they say prepare for and take advantage of the new energy reality. That means to me managing energy for organizational gain. Managing your energy is taking advantage of our new energy situation to make your company more outstanding, more competitive, more productive. This is a way to get a competitive advantage over the other people, the other companies in your industry. So let's take a look at how we go about doing that. Any energy management system has three fundamental goals. Keep these in mind the whole time. The first one is credible energy savings. And the operant word there is credible. An energy management system has mechanisms in place so that your estimates of energy savings have the solid basis, a solid technical basis behind them. Your CFO, your CEO, in fact, your whole office C-suite upstairs is investing in this energy management system. They need to know that there's something real coming back from it. And consequently, credible energy savings are one of the goals. The second goal is continuous improvement of your energy management system itself. What this means is that your energy management system should be reaching out to more departments. It should encompass more processes, engage more employees on an ongoing basis going forward. And finally, the third primary goal is persistence. Persistence means that this does not belong to any one individual. It doesn't even belong to any one department. Persistence means that this is a system that will continue to yield energy savings for your company beyond employees' tenure, beyond management changes, in fact, beyond ownership changes. This is an asset that you create. It generates savings for your company from now forward. Okay, so those are the three fundamental goals. Keep them in front of you: credible energy savings, continuous improvement of your energy management system, and persistence. So, your energy management system is organized around the plan, do, check, act continuous improvement cycle. Okay, this cycle was articulated by William Deming back in the 1930s. He worked at Bell Labs, he was a systems engineer. Deming took that forward as a means of improving quality. He didn't get much attention in the United States, but when he went to Japan after the war, they took him very seriously and improved their quality to the point where they threatened North American dominance in the auto market and still do today. Deming then came home, and the auto manufacturers in the United States and Canada adopted the continuous improvement cycle on quality, and then it started being applied to other things as well. It became applied to safety, became applied to environmental management, and numerous other things. Everybody sees the utility of this system. We're talking today about applying it to energy. The on ramp to the cycle is an energy policy and energy goals from your top management. This is so critical. When people see that top management has publicly committed to energy policy, that is energy performance improvement, then they are more willing within the organization to give resources, to give people's time, to give some thought to how they can get involved and what they can contribute to that process. Okay, if an individual is out there doing energy projects, that's great, but it's very difficult for anybody in any other department to support them because they don't have authorization to support them and bring resources to the table. So, an energy policy with energy goals is the critical first step in the continuous improvement cycle for energy. Okay, dropping into the cycle now. In the plan phase, you do a lot of the technical work. In the planning phase, you'll develop an energy profile and an energy baseline so you can determine what your savings are later on. You'll find out where your energy is coming from. And more importantly, you figure out where all that energy is actually going. Where's it being used in your facility? Most people don't know that. It's such a critical piece of information, but most people don't even know. Once that's in place, you develop energy performance indicators, which are normalized to give you an indication of your progress despite outside variables. Then you develop energy targets and finally energy action plans. These are the things you use to actually make things happen, where the rubber meets the road. With these in place, then we can step off into the do phase of our continuous improvement cycle. In the do phase, you're pushing this out to the entire organization. You've done the technical work, you've got a foundation. We're going to push this out to the organization now. What that means is that the operators who are operating your heavy energy intensive equipment get special training so that you know they're doing it right. The maintenance people get special training so that they know they are keeping it properly tuned for energy efficient operations. You open up a communication system, two-way communications. What you want here is very important. What you want here are suggestions and recommendations from your employees on how to improve your energy performance. You know, people always ask me, where can we get those non-capital energy savings from, the things that don't cost us anything? And they think there's a magic wand you wave. Well, there isn't. Or if there is, it's called your employees. That's where they come from. The people on the line see their job better than anybody else. You need to make them aware of energy as a consideration and solicit and reward their input on what can be done. I've seen tremendous things come out of engagement processes like this. Don't minimize the importance of your outreach to your employees here. In the check phase of your continuous improvement cycle, obviously you do a lot of checking on your projects, make sure they're performing as you intended, make sure that you're in compliance with all your regulations, do an internal audit, corrective and preventive action system. All those technical things are there to be checked on. You should also be checking on the performance of your rest of your energy management system. You know, check and see how many suggestions did we actually receive and how many of them are viable. How many of them can we actually use? Because that number should be going up every year. How many of your procurement specifications have been reformed to reflect a consideration for energy? It's things like that that are the long-term future of your organization. Okay, so this is more than just checking the performance of your machinery. This is checking the performance of your entire energy management system. Finally, in the ACT phase, you have a management review. This is an opportunity to formally engage management, to present them with your results, the savings that you're delivering, to ask them for advice and direction on how to move out next. It's their opportunity to bring more resources, to reset goals, to reset measurement indicators, performance indicators. It's their opportunity to put their hand on the wheel and make sure this is going in the direction they want. Keep in mind that these people are the sponsors. It's the management review where your sponsors see back what it was they started. Okay, this is a critical aspect of your energy management system. In order to keep everybody engaged, management must remain engaged. And this is an opportunity to do that. Don't let it pass by. Let me just quickly talk about one example of results that I've seen from energy management systems. And I've seen a lot of them. This is really pretty remarkable. Here's a client I had in the Pacific Northwest. They were a food processor. They were given a goal at the end of 2012 by corporate of reducing their energy cost by 15%. In other words, $94,500. Okay. At the time, that was considered pretty steep. Everybody thought, wow, 15%, how are we going to do that? Fortunately, we'd been working with them through 2012 to institute an energy management system at their location. And you can see from their electrical consumption there, you can see some of the returns they've gotten. Some of these were, technical, inductive lighting, refrigeration upgrades, gave them a good deal. That last one is a very interesting one, it's chiller pump optimization. And I'm not going to go into that one right now, but it certainly gave them a good deal of savings, and it was a non-capital project. This was a recommendation that came from one of their line people about chilled water consumption. They had a lot of pumps pumping out chilled water to cool their product, and when they did some experiments, they found that they didn't need 2/3 of those pumps. So they shut down 2/3 of their pumps. It cost them nothing, but it resulted in a 5% reduction in their annual electricity cost, which is a pretty remarkable find. They ended up with 16.7% electrical energy savings by April of 2013. A pretty remarkable result. And they had achieved their annual goal that was set by corporate by the end of April. Okay. Now, something else that came out of this, which is very interesting, you see the second table there. They got a lot of savings out of their water. They started off thinking we're going to save natural gas, so we're going to cut back on our hot water consumption to save natural gas. And they started thinking about ways of doing that. And sure enough, they did save natural gas. I didn't put those numbers up there because everything was getting too small to read. But they did save natural gas. But the big thing that came out of this was savings on water. And you can see they saved $253,000 by April of 2013. The more remarkable thing is that all three projects were non-capital. In other words, this was $253,000 that they saved in the first 4 months of the year that they will receive on and on every year thereafter, that came at no cost to them. Okay, now part of what's going on here is, water savings amount to, first of all, the consumption cost, the purchasing cost of the water. Water savings also reduce the energy needed to pre-treat the water, and a lot of industrial sites need to pre-treat their water before they release it. And finally, there are significant savings in not having to dispose of the water. Okay, so when you wrap all those together, water ended up being a pretty significant cost impact. And what blew everybody away was that they saved more money on water cost than they saved in energy. This is ostensibly an energy project, but it was clear that the water cost savings were above and beyond anything they saved on energy. There's one there called CIP optimization. I want to talk about that one in a minute. Here's the story for this company. They're a food processor. They have about 80 products that they make at their facility. Okay, so they have big kettles that they cook things in. They have to clean these kettles between products. And the way they were doing that was basically with a hot water rinse, a debris rinse, a chemical hot water wash to make sure everything was washed out, and then a final hot water rinse to get the chemicals out. So they were rinsing these things 3 times with hot water between product runs, and sometimes they would do 4 or 5 product runs in a day. Okay. Somebody suggested that, maybe they should look at what they're doing with all that hot water and why was it anyway that we're doing this? And, the first answer is always, well, that's the way it's always been done. But somebody has to look into it a little more deeply than that. What they realized is that the reason this cleaning was being done at all was because they needed to limit the allergen content. They needed to control the allergen content of various products so that people buying them don't have an unexpected allergen in the product. Okay. So what they ended up doing was looking at that and saying, well, we can continue doing this rinse and wash all the time, but what would happen if we sequenced our production runs every day so that we always cooked the lowest allergen product first? And then the next lowest allergen, then the next, and finally at the end of the day, you do the highest allergen content product. What would happen then? And so they actually went and did that, and they ran some experiments. In between, in between product runs, all they did was a cold water rinse. Basically, they did a debris rinse with cold water. So they ran this through, and they ran, several batches of product. And what they found is that they still were within specs on allergens at the end of the day. So now what they do is instead of washing these kettles 3, 4, 5 times a day with 3 hot water rinses, they just wash them once with hot water at the end of the day, and in between times they do a cold water debris rinse. So this saved natural gas energy, but above and beyond that, you can see the water savings they got were outstanding. And these are savings that they will see from now for as long as they're in production. They're theirs. Didn't cost them anything. They just had to listen to their employees. Let me talk about a few other benefits that you see in an energy management system, because this is where transformation really does come in. You do see water savings. We just talked about that, both in purchasing cost and disposal cost. Obviously, if you're reducing your natural gas, reducing your coal, reducing your diesel, whatever it is you're burning, you will get emissions reductions. And as carbon caps come into place around the country and around the world, those are going to actually take on monetary value very shortly. So you'll see those as well. I've seen solid waste reductions. Not entirely sure why. I think a lot of people just pay more attention to their work. Energy awareness tends to heighten awareness overall about people's jobs, and they pay more attention. So we do see solid waste reduction, some of it just actual reduction, some of it being, somebody steps up and says, hey, maybe we can recycle that. Those kind of things happening. So those are very valuable as well. One of the more interesting things is the breaking down of communication stovepipes, and this really is where transformation happens. Um, when you talk about energy, you're including everybody in that conversation. The stovepipes break down. People who haven't had a reason to talk to each other since the creation, all of a sudden got to talk to each other. They got to find out what each other knows and what each other is doing. It's a really valuable facet of your energy management system. One of the nicest compliments I got in my career was a few months ago. I was helping a client put their energy management system in place, and when it was done, one of the fellows grabbed me outside the conference room. He said, "Paul, it's really great the system we have in place, and that you helped us do that and find these energy savings, and that was all great. Um, but the most important thing you did for us is you made us have this conversation. You got us to talk to each other." And he realized the value of that. You find things that you didn't know existed. You find ideas and opportunities that you didn't know were out there. So breaking down communication stovepipes are one of those things that transforms your organization, not just on energy, but on everything. Finally, you get those non-capital energy savings projects. As I said, when you listen to your employees, when you start thinking about your own processes, you can find ways of changing them to save energy that cost you nothing. These are really valuable opportunities, and management loves them. Okay, a few caveats going forward. First of all, these gains do not come without some work up front. You're going to have to invest some time, some people time, maybe some consulting time, some technical time, whatever it is. There's some work up front to be done. It's worth it in the end. But don't fool yourself. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is something you're going to do over a weekend. It isn't. Keep in mind that the goal is a persistent system that keeps on giving. All right. A persistent system, as I said, outlasts employees, it outlasts management changes, it outlasts even ownership changes. It's something that continues to yield energy savings and cost savings through the years, on and on and on. Okay. That's one place where ISO certification really can help. ISO 50001 is the international standard for energy management. You don't need to have ISO certification to see the bottom line benefits here. But if you have ISO certification, the auditor's coming in once a year. And consequently, this doesn't get pushed off people's desk. Therefore, it remains persistent, it remains productive, it remains topmost on people's minds. Okay, you can do it without ISO certification, and I've done that in many places. You just have to be sure you're getting the right hooks and the right organizational mechanisms in place so that this continues happening. If somebody's not coming in to check on it, the organization itself somehow needs to make sure this continues happening. Keep in mind that experience is important. A lot of what you're dealing with here are your own processes. These are the things that an energy consultant can't touch or doesn't know enough about, right? So your experience and your team's experience are the source of a lot of the ideas. A lot of the mechanisms in your energy management system come from your own experience. It's critical that you be involved. You have to own it. Your organization has to own this system at the end of the day. Okay? Let me just leave you with a little slide on some of the services that we offer. I see our job really as clearing away roadblocks. Every organization is pressed for time, pressed for resources, pressed for expertise, right? Whatever resource and expertise limitations you have, we want to come in and address them. We just want to be able to make this happen. If you need us to come in and be your mentors and be your strategic energy manager for a short period of time, we do that. We'll get you up and running, mentor somebody so that you have a productive system. If all you need is technical expertise to do modeling, we will do that as well. Okay, so whatever you need on whatever level, we can deliver that. Let us get those roadblocks out of your way. If you want to do it yourself and just need some training, we've got a whole portfolio of training opportunities there. We can deliver them on site, or we can deliver them in a public manner, and make sure you're apprised of that. If you need a custom system, a custom training course developed, we can certainly do that as well. The important thing here is that you identify your roadblocks and get moving. There are savings to be had. I have seen this over and over again. There are savings to be had, but it's important that you get moving. You make that investment and decide that now is the time to address your energy picture. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to move on here. Thank you guys for being in the session today, and let's move on and take a look at some questions.